Let's be real. For so many of us, Notion is basically our second brain. But sometimes, doesn't it feel more like a digital filing cabinet? It's a fantastic place to store things, but not always the best place to actually get things done. So what if we could change that? What if we could transform Notion into a true command center that actively works for you? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go on a journey from some clever hacks all the way to a complete workflow revolution. That is a pretty bold statement, right? And it really hints at a fundamental shift in how we can use Notion. We're not just talking about some minor update here, we are talking about a genuine game changer. So, what is this feature? And more importantly, what does it unlock for all of us? Okay, so this is the puzzle we're tackling today. How do we make an action inside of Notion? You know, like clicking a button, set off a whole chain of events across all the other apps we depend on. It's really all about finally bridging that gap between planning your work in Notion and actually doing it everywhere else. To really appreciate the solution, we first have to understand the problem. You see, for a long time, there's been this core challenge that's held Notion back from reaching its true automation potential. Think about it this way. Does your Notion workspace ever feel like it's on its own deserted island? You've got all your brilliant plans, your super detailed tasks, your perfectly organized databases, but getting that information over to your other tools feels like you're sending a message in a bottle. It's slow, it's manual, and honestly, it's a pain. And that's really the heart of the problem. Your work might live in Notion, but it doesn't flow. This creates that friction we all know and hate. That endless copy-pasting between Notion and your calendar, the manual data entry to create an invoice, that constant switching back and forth. It's a massive time waster. So how do we start to solve this? Let's start with level 1. For years, the standard answer was to build a bridge off that Notion island, and that bridge was built with a powerful tool that I'm sure many of you know and love, Zapier. The whole concept, as you can see here, is incredibly simple. You have a trigger, and you have an action. When this happens, do that. This super simple logic is the foundation of almost all modern automation, connecting thousands and thousands of apps together. And this shows just how much you can do right out of the box. Using the standard Notion integration with Zapier, you can automate a ton of common tasks like creating pages or updating items in a database. It's a really powerful first step, but it has some pretty critical limits. And that brings us to level 2. So what happens when the standard stuff just isn't enough? Well, you have to get creative. And this is where the community of Notion experts came up with a very clever, but yeah, slightly more complex workaround. Okay, first, just a quick refresher. Relations are one of Notion's superpowers. They let you link a page in one database, say projects, to a page in another, like clients. This creates this amazing interconnected web of information, and they are absolutely critical for any kind of advanced setup. And boom, here's the roadblock. As Notion expert William Nutt points out, for the longest time, Zapier's standard integration just could not update these crucial relation properties. So you could automatically create a new contact, but you couldn't automatically link it to the right company. This was a huge source of frustration for so many people. So the community came up with this clever 4-step workaround. First, a trigger, like someone filling out a form, kicks things off. Second, Zapier creates a new item in your first database. Third, it goes and finds the matching item in your second database. And finally, and this is the key, it runs a tiny piece of code to manually create that relation. Now, don't let the word code scare you off. You do not need to be a developer. The magic here is just a pre-written snippet of JavaScript. All it's doing is sending a direct instruction, a patch request, which is just a fancy way of saying, hey, update this, directly to Notion's API, telling it to connect page A with page B. It's just a command that the normal Zapier interface couldn't send. But of course, with any cool workaround comes potential bumps in the road. This is a real post from a user on the Zapier community forums who hit a pretty common snag. It just goes to show that while this method is super powerful, it can be a little fragile. And just as quickly, another user jumps in with the solution. I love this. It's a perfect example of the power of the community. These kinds of expert hacks are almost never created in a vacuum. They're shared, they're debugged, and they're supported by other users who are all just trying to push the boundaries of what's possible. Which brings us to level 3. The workarounds were clever for sure, but they were still just that, workarounds. They solved the relations problem, but they didn't solve the problem of speed and, well, immediacy. But a recent Notion update has changed the game completely. This quote really captures the shift perfectly. Before, our automations were never truly instant. there was always a little bit of a delay. But now, thanks to native support for webhooks, Notion can finally communicate with the outside world in real time. So what's the difference? We'll take a look here. The old way, called polling, meant Zapier had to ask Notion every few minutes, anything new? How about now? Anything new? It was slow and inefficient. With webhooks, Notion doesn't wait to be asked. The second an event happens, like you press a button, it shouts that information out to your automation tool, instantly, no delay.
And this is where it gets really, really exciting. Just look at these examples. For a content calendar, one single button press in Notion could instantly create the calendar event, assign all the subtasks, and even spin up a new Google Drive folder. Or think about invoicing. Press Send Invoice, and bam! Instantly, a Stripe invoice is generated, the Notion page is updated, and your client gets a Slack notification. One click, a dozen actions, zero delay. This is the power of real-time automation.
And what's the result of all this? The time savings are just immense. We're not talking minutes, we are talking about saving hours every single week. That's time you're no longer spending on that manual, repetitive admin stuff. That's time you get back to focus on the work that actually matters. Okay, so let's bring it all together. Why is this move from polling to webhooks, from clunky workarounds to native, instant actions? Why is it such a huge deal? Because it fundamentally changes what Notion is. It is no longer just a passive place to store your information. It has become an active, interactive command center for your entire digital life. It's a place where you don't just plan your work, you actually kick it off. And that is the crucial point. This entire transformation, this whole new level of power and convenience, it's all built on the back of this one incredibly important feature, webhooks. So we're left with one final thought. Your Notion workspace isn't just a notebook anymore. It's a command center. The possibilities are now pretty much endless. The only real question is, what are you going to automate first?